Dante's Boxing Nation, what's going on, guys? You know, when it comes to the sport of boxing, it has a lot in common with playing video games. In a video game, at least the majority of them, the further you get on that game, the harder the levels get, right? And when it comes to the sport of boxing, the most difficult level to complete is when you start to fight against young, hungry lions. Once you start to get a little older, and once these young, hungry lions are coming after your throne, they want your position, and they're extremely hungry. This is the most difficult level to complete or pass when it comes to being a boxer. We've seen how difficult this is. If you watch Sergio Martinez's last couple of performances, and I won't even blame it on age. You can attribute a little of it when it comes to age, but at the same time, it just gets more difficult as you get older. You have to be more on your P's and Q's as you get older. Okay? We've seen this with Carl Froch, and you gotta excuse me, guys. I'm a little sick right now, so throat is a little cracked up right now. But anyway, like I said, we've seen this with Carl Froch against George Groves just this past weekend. Carl Froch is the same age as Floyd Mayweather, coincidentally. And we've seen him struggle. You've already got fighters and promoters in his own country saying that he needs to retire because he's past his prime. Like I said, this is how difficult it is to fend off the young, hungry lions. It takes a very, very special fighter to be able to fight young lions, dominate them, and beat them fairly easy, and still impress. Not have anyone criticize your performance or not too much, right? Floyd Mayweather, at least today, and Bernard Hopkins, but Bernard Hopkins he's a kind of like a roller coaster type performer, because one minute he'll look spectacular, next minute not so great, and it goes like that, up and down, up and down. But when it comes to Floyd Mayweather, he has been completely consistent when it comes to doing something extremely difficult. The question is, after Pacquiao's fairly decent performance against Brandon Rios, can Pacquiao beat some of these young, hungry lions? Okay? Since Pacquiao has been a welterweight, he has not been able to do it. All right? Like I said, we've seen Pacquiao look fairly good against fighters like Margarito, but Margarito had just came off of a knockout loss. Pacquiao looked good against Cotto. Cotto had just came off of a knockout loss. Pacquiao looked spectacular against Ricky Hatton. Ricky Hatton had just recently came off a knockout loss by Floyd Mayweather. Once Pacquiao faced fighters like Tim Bradley, who was a young, hungry lion, regardless of who we thought won. You could say you thought Bradley won. You could say you thought Pacquiao won. You could say Pacquiao was robbed. That's fine. The bottom line is Pacquiao did not look impressive against a guy who had a broken foot and did not have the type of power, or didn't have anywhere near the type of power that Manny Pacquiao had. When you think of the fact that Manny Pacquiao was in the ring with a guy with, and at least this is what the fans say, a guy with no power, a guy who has a broken foot, and didn't even have the experience that Manny Pacquiao had, at least fighting on a big stage. Bradley, he had experience, but he did not have, the big lights, the big stage, pay-per-view type of experience, okay? And this is a guy that Manny Pacquiao struggled against. Like I said before, you can say that Manny Pacquiao won the fight, but even Jim Lampley himself admitted that the first 4 rounds actually, Manny Pacquiao, he was waiting all the way to the last minute. He wouldn't do anything for the first 2 minutes. He would wait all the way to the last minute, and then he would throw maybe one or two big left hands. All right? Tim Bradley been a very active fighter. He was very consistent throughout these rounds. Once again, I'm not arguing who won the fight. I'm just getting you guys to understand that the fight was extremely competitive. The referee himself who called the fight, or I'm sorry, not called the fight, the referee who worked the fight, he said that the fight was extremely close. All right? The point that I'm making once again is the first 3 rounds could have easily went to Tim Bradley. Now, in the last 3 rounds, even Freddie Roach himself said that Manny Pacquiao lost those rounds. From 10 all the way to round 12, Freddie Roach admitted that he believed Tim Bradley won those rounds. Everything in between, there was a few rounds in between where Manny Pacquiao, he won the round decisively. All right? And then there were other rounds, once again, that were close. Like I said, in between, from round 4 all the way to round 9, those rounds right there, I think about half of them, Manny Pacquiao, he won decisive. And the other rounds, as far as I'm concerned, were swing rounds. You could have swung them either way. There was a lot of rounds in that fight that could have went either way. Okay? But once again, if you want to say that Manny Pacquiao got robbed and all of that, I'm fine with that. I'm completely fine with that. I have no problem with someone saying Manny Pacquiao won the fight. I have no problem with someone saying that Tim Bradley won the fight. But let's go ahead and move on. Since we're talking about Tim Bradley, the first thing I noticed is when Manny Pacquiao had that fight with Tim Bradley, all of the people who were saying that Manny Pacquiao was robbed, almost none of them were saying, I want to see a rematch. Almost all of them were saying, no, I don't want to see that fight again. I don't want to see that fight again. And once again, man, this is where the whole truth comes in. You know, I'm really good at deciphering what a person is saying on the outside and what it really translates to on the inside. There have been so many times where a boxer, trainer, or promoter, he says something in particular, but I knew that's not what he really meant. But he couldn't say what he really meant because then it would make him look reluctant. It will make him look like he's trying to avoid someone, or it'll make him look some other kind of way, right? And I've pointed this out on a lot of videos, and surely enough, later on, those same people who I'm talking about, they end up saying exactly what I was saying they meant months before, almost word for word. It has happened a lot of times. Like I said, I know what people really are trying to say, but they can't say that, all right? For a perfect example, I told you guys this a long time ago. I had a guy from the Geek Squad come to my house so that he could replace my TV, and it was a Filipino guy, big Manny Pacquiao fan, and I remember asking him, right after the Pacquiao-Bradley fight, probably about 2 weeks after, I said, why do you think Manny Pacquiao doesn't want a rematch to get his title back? And he went completely into Manny Pacquiao casual fan mode. And he said all of the things we normally hear. He said it word for word, which is, oh, you know, he doesn't want to fight him because no one wants to watch that fight. No one wants to watch that fight, and everyone already knows that Manny Pacquiao won. And that's the reason he doesn't want the fight. And then I start breaking it down and making a whole lot of sense and start, you know, giving him stats and examples and telling him how, you know, when a fighter or a champion, when he loses his title and he's robbed, they take the belt away from him. 9 times out of 10, the great champion comes back, gets his title back, and then I start talking about this and this and this and that, and he's looking at me like, wow, this dude, he really knows his boxing. And as a matter of fact, he said that to me and said, you know what, man, you're right. That makes sense. That completely makes sense. And then all of a sudden, the whole truth started coming out. Then he was pretty much almost a different person. He started telling me how he was like, man, that Tim Bradley was tough, man. He took everything that Pacquiao threw at him, and he kept coming forward. He had head movement, and in the final rounds, he was moving around like he wasn't even tired, and it looked like Manny Pacquiao was tired for the first time. This is everything that he was telling me. He basically went from talking that Manny Pacquiao casual fan stuff to basically telling the whole damn truth, okay? So moving on, guys. Let's go ahead and get into this list of fighters that you guys see on this picture right here. So the questions are, Will Manny Pacquiao start to fight young, hungry, up-and-coming lions like Floyd Mayweather fighting against Canelo Alvarez, like Carl Froch fighting against George Groves? We understand that Manny Pacquiao, he fought against Brandon Rios, but we already know that that guy just came off of a loss like a lot of Manny Pacquiao's opponents. And not only that, but he was completely tailor-made for Manny Pacquiao's style. Now we want to see him fight a guy who is going to come in the ring as having just as good of a chance of winning as Manny Pacquiao has. And in the picture of these fighters on this screen right now, these are those type of opponents. Okay? Let's start with Tim Bradley, since we just talked about the history with Tim Bradley. Now, you know, for those of you guys who don't know the story, Manny Pacquiao, he fought Tim Bradley. Tim Bradley won in a controversial way. After the fight was over, Manny Pacquiao, he refused a rematch. Tim Bradley wanted it. Manny Pacquiao wanted no rematch. After Tim Bradley fought Provodnikov, Manny Pacquiao changed his mind. Then he said he wants the rematch. Okay? Then Manny Pacquiao, or maybe I missed a step, Manny Pacquiao gets knocked out by Marquez. No one gives Bradley a chance of beating Marquez because Marquez just knocked out Pacquiao, right? Bradley, he surprises the boxing world, and he beats Marquez very easy. Now, where does Manny Pacquiao go from that point on? Like I said before, Manny Pacquiao surprisingly went from refusing to fight Tim Bradley to then offering Tim Bradley more money than Marquez was offering Tim Bradley to get him in the ring. Why? Because they thought that Tim Bradley was basically damaged goods. Okay? Turned out that wasn't the case. The question now is, will Manny Pacquiao fight Tim Bradley now? I think the fight will be totally different, guys, if this fight happens. If you look at the first 4 rounds of that Bradley versus Pacquiao fight, you seen a Bradley that was doing really good in those first 3-4 rounds. And it was mainly because he was using foot movement. Bradley said leading up to the fight that he's going to beat Manny Pacquiao with foot movement. He had some of the best foot movement in that fight until he broke his ankle. You go back and you watch the fight, you'll notice that Tim Bradley, he was forced to kind of stand in front of Manny Pacquiao, going toe-to-toe with him. He couldn't move. You know, he had no mobility at the time. And if Tim Bradley put up a fight like that with one fucking foot and no power, imagine how Tim Bradley will look healthy. All right? Right now, Tim Bradley is sitting on the throne right now. You know, his confidence is at a whole nother level because he just beat 2 fucking Hall of Famers back to back, regardless of what we think of the decision. We know he beat Marquez hands down. So his confidence is soaring right now is Tim Bradley. So if that fight happens, I think it will be a totally different fight. I think it will be an uphill battle for Manny Pacquiao, and I would lean towards Tim Bradley to win a rematch. All right? Let's move on. Keith Thurman. When it comes to Keith Thurman, like I said, guys, these are the type of fights that Manny Pacquiao, he needs to take because he hasn't fought these type of opponents. Keith Thurman is a terrific boxer, but he loves the knockout, and he goes for the knockout, all right? He showed in his last fight against Chavez, the Argentinian, that he can box, he can take a good punch, he has ring generalship, he can counter punch, he can pretty much do it all. So if Keith Thurman were to go in the ring with Manny Pacquiao, I think Keith Thurman would knock Pacquiao out, all right? Let's go to Canelo Alvarez. Canelo Alvarez. Once again, when Canelo was fighting against Floyd Mayweather, the hypocrisy came in, right? Or I should say it snuck in. And it overwhelmed everyone with all type of excuses, at least when it came to the Canelo fans and the Floyd Mayweather haters, all right? They basically said that Floyd Mayweather's only taking this fight because Floyd, he has the experience, Canelo's not ready, etc., etc. So how come no one is bringing up Pacquiao versus Canelo? Should Manny Pacquiao beat Canelo easy because he has so much more experience? At least that's what you guys were saying when Mayweather was fighting Canelo. What about Manny Pacquiao?